get to my screens, but I think I'm going to have to ask Michelle if she can advance the next slide to Jay's slide. Michelle, can you do that for me?
Get over there to that, Ray. Just a moment.
Thanks.
I can do it, Michelle. I'm over here.
Got it,
Yeah,
Rosie?
my screen has
Is it
kind
left
of
side over here or the center one?
Left
the
side.
one on the left, stage left.
All right, I will do that.
Okay, we're very happy today to have James J. Harlock today to give us a presentation on unraveling the mystery of people. Over the years, Jay has tried to figure out people and to address the issue of why they do the things they do. This culminated when he became a senior management consultant in late 2000, and for over 10 years worked with all size organizations to provide recruiting, hiring, management, team building, and strategic planning expertise. During this time period, Jay also explored personal relationships on all levels and discovered many commonalities in business relationships and personal relationships, which can all impact stress, happiness, and goal achievement. A good friend of the San Antonio Manufacturers Association through Bill Cox. And Bill, we just want to give a shout out to you for thanking you for helping us to get Jay to be our turn over to.
So, Ray, you appear to be having some microphone issues.
Come over and rescue you. Whoops.
Go get him, Jay. Thank you.
There we go.
Yeah,
Oh,
I believe he
disappeared.
crashed.
He did. So, Jay, we're going to, without further ado, if everybody would put your hands together, hitting your function 4 key, F4, a little clap, and we'd like to welcome Jay to the stage.
Thank you very much. Let me get my webcam on. And there we go. So you can see I look so much like my avatar. And I'm sure that applies to everyone here in the room. So what I'm going to do, you'll see on the one screen, for those of you who haven't taken the accumex index, you can take the accumex. It's complimentary. The link is open until the end of the day on Sunday. It takes about 5 minutes to complete. You'll get some ahas. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know about yourself. What's cool is the survey will know it, but you can use these concepts in helping you into developing your workforce. So we have a lot to cover. I just want to start by saying to fully understand everything the accumex tells us is about 8 hours, but I only have you for about 45 minutes. So I'm going to get right down to it here. So I want to ask the following question. And this gives us a chance to play with our avatars a little bit. Have anybody in the audience ever hired the next greatest employee, raise your hand, only to wonder why they don't perform as they interview? And I see many of you have raised your hands. Thank you. But we're going to explain why today, all right? A lot of organizations can't find the right people to fit their organization. That is one issue. There is, finding people that fit your organization to perform the job. They're going to show up every single day and do a great job for you. So I'm going to go talk about this, and then we're going to wrap up the presentation with this. But you have 2 applicants. It's all probably happened to you. They have the same background, the same skill set. One turns out to be a rock star. The other turns out like a rock. And there's no need for frustration. It's all in the human wiring. And again, that's why I would like you to take the accumex, because the concepts here will resonate with you, but also people that are not wired like you, those concepts will resonate. There's a little delay here. Okay. So today's agenda, we're going to understand what human wiring is. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the accumex index. I do, again, obtain your own complimentary one. You can text accumex, you'll get a link. And about 10 minutes after you complete it, you'll get your suite of reports, which will be your natural wiring. I'll explain that in a minute. Adjusted self, intensity of the drive factors, the environment that you both best thrive within, any self-change, any changes that are going through it, and how to best interact with me. So I want you to carry these concepts on past today's presentation. Knowing the wiring of jobs and matching the wiring of people increases employee job satisfaction, which then in turn means higher performance, increased productivity, and elevated quality. Getting set up here. So we are all individuals and we're individually wired. But how can we tell who is wired in which particular way? And how do we know who is wired best for a role? I'm sure all of you have individuals within your organization that you'd love to clone. I wish I could clone them. I wish I could get more individuals like them. It's all in the human wiring. You'll get a lot of concepts from today's presentation. Now, let me explain human wiring. In the 18 to 24 month period after any human being is born, certain chemicals come together in the brain and they create specific neural pathways. Now, our brains will create millions of these specific neural pathways. We measure 4 specifically, but this is innate. This has been with you since age 2. We measure nature. And human wiring is static. It's not impacted by ethnicity, by age, by gender. So it's static across the human race. However, nurture are the things that also impact behavior. It's probably the reason why many of us in this room don't behave the same way today as we did when we were 18 years old, because things happen over time. Nurture is external elements that impact behavior. Where you're born, culture, nationality, and religion has an impact. Upbringing, education, life's experiences, all the good and the bad things that have happened to us over time do impact behavior. Age and maturity. When I was a kid, my dad used to say to me, Jay, the older you get, the smarter I'll become. And man, was he right. Birth order can have an impact on behavior, but not wiring. And so can morals and ethics. People say to me, Jay, what are the wiring patterns of people in prison? Well, they can be similar to the wiring patterns of many of us sitting in this room, but they're there for different reasons. So human wiring is static. It stays with you your entire lifetime. It does not change. We measure 4 specific pathways that apply in the work environment and in personal relationships. Because people interaction is an important aspect of work. It's an important aspect of people interactions. And there's 4 of them that we measure. We call them A, B, C, and D, and I will explain them all as we move forward. So in the accumex output, for those of you that take it, there will be 2 charts. The natural self. The natural self has been your wiring since about 24 months old. It does not change. The correlation is our wiring tells us the environment we best thrive within. And when you match the wiring of what a job holds with the wiring of a person, that's what engages them more. The adjusted self that will be in your reports is a rear view mirror of the prior 90 days of your life. Are you energized getting your motivators? Are you de-energized because you're having to make changes? So, the report will explain all of that on the adjusted self as well. So, I'm going to explain how this is all set up. For those of you that do complete, and I do encourage everyone to do so. No salesman will follow up if you complete the report, so please do so. You'll notice that on your report, there's a green line, and to the left, you'll see RL factor. RL simply means response level, and the response level is the number of words you've selected. It creates the green line that's unique to you. So when you complete this, it's unique to you. And you can use the information that's going to be pertained to these reports in your everyday roles in dealing with other people. So what we do is we divide the drives between high and low. Dots to the right of the green line are high, dots to the left are low. And so we're going to go through all of this. And I'm going to explain to you how you can use this to develop your own workforce. Now, you'll notice when you take this, some of you will see L's, some of you will see W's, some of you will see N's. That simply means, do you like something? Do you want something? Or do you need something? All right. And that's completely explained in the drive intensity report that will accompany this. Let me get in and explain some of these characteristics for you. I said we measure 4 specific drives. First one we measure is the A drive, which we call autonomy. This has 2 impacts in an organization. It's idea flow, but it also tells me the type of role the individual is best suited for. So if your dot is to the right, high in the A, you are more autonomous by nature. You prefer your idea best. You're most engaged with your thumbprint on ideas and plans of action. You're more actively assertive. High A likes to accept and give elements of conflict. Now, low A is just the opposite. Low A likes the team, prefers the best idea, wants options in decision making, can be more passively assertive, and I'll explain this in just a second, and likes to minimize conflict. What you'll notice is whatever your drive characteristics are, if a person is the opposite of that specific drive, the characteristics are the opposite. So this way you can get a better handle and a better understanding of dealing with people as you go about your daily business. So oftentimes, an ideal high A meeting that's scheduled for 30 minutes, it goes 55 minutes because everybody has to put in their ideas, their plans of action. Oftentimes with low A, we want to discuss lots of options, which can at times slow the decision-making process. It's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. It just is. So as we're going through this presentation, think of jobs in your organization where you may want somebody to be more high A, more autonomous, more accepting of elements of conflict. Oftentimes, if you're going to be driving change through an organization or maybe implementing some lean programs, you may want a high A to do that. If you're running production, running machines, oftentimes you may want a low A to do that. The best way of doing things. See, here's the unique thing about the human mind. The human brain is so powerful, it can make us do things that are negative to our own well-being. And, if you're in a work environment, we spend a good chunk of our time in the work environment. So if we're engaged and satisfied, we come home less stressed. There's good stress and there's bad stress. Bad stress is when we try to make changes to who we innately are. That's what we call bad stress. Good stress are situations of meeting a deadline or getting that order out on time or making sure we hit our quality numbers. So it's understanding that kind of situation. Now, in the workplace, what oftentimes happens is higher A's will sometimes want to dominate the environment with their ideas. Since they accept elements of conflict, a lot of times a high A meeting, for 10 minutes we'll bang heads. An ideal high A meeting, I kind of joke about, there's yelling, screaming, breaking of glass and furniture. Then we go out to dinner together and say, was it that fun? Low A's go, why are you doing that? Let's sit down, let's let's figure the options, and then let's go out to dinner together. And the high A's go, well, that's sometimes a little bit boring. So again, it's not good, not bad, not right, not wrong, just is. And as we're going through this, think of jobs within your organization and then use the information in the note sheet that you receive on the accumex to help you better improve individuals, the hiring and development of people within the organization. Now, with every drive, there comes strengths and there comes limitations. There is no perfect individual. So part of what we want to do is help people maximize their innate strengths while minimizing their limitations. If you're lower in the A, more team-oriented by nature, your strengths is you are a natural team player. You like the idea that best benefits everyone. You're more accommodating and harmonious by nature. However, limitations is conflict can impede idea flow. A lot of times, low A may agree with something just so they don't have to put up with the headbutting, because actually that kind of drains the low A. It negatively impacts their wiring pattern. Weighing options can slow the decision-making process. They may accept the idea to avoid conflict, but will resist passively. Now, folks, rank has its privileges. You're a supervisor, an owner, a manager. You do have, there's rank there. And so obviously people will atone to that. But oftentimes this can happen inadvertently in the work environment. So one of the things that's very important is to encourage idea flow within the organization so that everyone has a chance to contribute. Part of developing your workforce is making an environment where people can freely exchange ideas. One tip I want to give you here for improved idea exchange is limit contributions in meetings to only a few minutes and let everyone know they're expected to bring ideas. That really helps engagement within the organization. Now, if you're high in the A, slides are taking a little second here. The strength is you act on your own ideas. I like my idea best and I act on it. I accept elements of conflict. Oftentimes, high A's are driven by no, which means when a high A is told no to something they really want to do, they go ahead and do it anyway. The limitations, they act on their own ideas. Now, although this is a strength, it can also be a limitation. It's a strength because I get things done. It can be a limitation because it may not be optimal and I may not be including of other people. I can create unnecessary conflict if not properly challenged. And sometimes there's no boundaries. So what happens when you put someone who's low A or team oriented into a high A role? They feel exhausted, very stressful. What happens when you put somebody who's high A or more autonomous into a more team-oriented role? Oftentimes, they will create conflict with coworkers because they need some elements of conflict. They need some elements of challenge. And again, it's not good, not bad, not right, not wrong, just is. Now, the second drive we're going to talk about is the B drive. Communication. Now, I want to make one point. Everybody talks and everybody thinks. That's how all human beings are built. But what the B drive tells us is how people really buy in, how they really buy in and process thought. So if you're low in the B, you're more of an internal processor. If you're high in the B, you're more of an external processor. So there's an opposite in the way the brain actually transforms and thinks through ideas. High Bs are verbal developers. Oftentimes a high B will do something like this. Well, I'm thinking about turning right, but then again, maybe I'm going to turn left, but I'm not quite sure. Maybe we'll go straight. At the end of the conversation, though, as the high B verbalizes, they actually crystallize thought process. Low B is just the opposite. Low B talks, low B thinks, but low B processes thought best internally. Okay, internally. I'll give you a real good example. High B at the store, the salesperson says, when do you want to take delivery of your washer and dryer? The high B will do it just like this verbally. Well, you know, I got a busy week. I have to attend this conference. I'm going to be tied up on Wednesday and Thursday. Friday's a busy day. Saturday. We'll do it Saturday morning. The low B has the exact same conversation, but instead of having it verbally, the low B has it internally. You know who you are in the room, all right? Now here's some interesting interaction facts. High B, when they don't get a response to a question, will start to repeat themselves. High Bs, by their nature, want response. Low Bs give response after the thought process is complete. Now, this isn't something that the low B may know cold, or what do you want for lunch? This is something that requires thought. You know, if you don't take anything away from this session but this point, if you are a high B, a verbal processor by nature, and you're dealing with a low B, and you see the blank processing stare, after you ask a question, don't say anything else. And if the dead air is hard for you to take, make up your own response, like, hey, do you need a minute or two to think about this? If you're low in the B, an internal thought processor, all right, and you're dealing with a high B, just give them a response. Say, you know what, good point, let me think about it. You have high Bs in your organizations. You have low Bs in your organization. This will immediately improve communication, all right? High Bs face-to-face interaction can be very energizing. With low Bs, face-to-face interaction over long periods of time can be a bit draining. The conversation style can be a little different. Higher B likes to think out loud. Lower B's comments oftentimes are direct and a matter of fact after they've thought about it. So think about this also from a jobs perspective. Sometimes I want a low B who's going to be more heads down, analytical, matter of fact. Oftentimes those work really well in machine operation. Oftentimes they may want a high B in a specific role. Oftentimes company trainers or a customer service rep, or maybe even a salesperson, it depends. But where you want that people interaction, the heads up, you want the high B. When you want more analytical, focused on the work itself, you want the low B. Now again, B drive has strengths and limitations. Here we go. Oops, go fast here. Okay. See, I'm technology challenged right now. Low B strengths, they think ideas through before verbalizing. They enjoy figuring things out for themselves, prefer some alone time. Think about if that's a job, all right? This is how you can develop your own workforce, understanding how people are wired and then training them in the role. I'm going to talk a little bit later at the end of this presentation about hire for the wiring and teach the person the skill. The limitations of low B at times may be to think about something, but they may not express it externally. Will block out excessive verbiage coming at them. And at times, if I'm a little bit drained, I may avoid interactions with other people. Now, again, as low B has strengths and limitations, high B has strengths and limitations. High B, good verbal communicator, all right? Will adjust their delivery style based upon the reaction they want from others. If it's a positive reaction, they may be very charming. If it's a negative reaction, they may not be as charming. They thrive with elements of face-to-face people interaction. So imagine if you've hired somebody for a heads down role in the organization and they're more of a heads up person, oftentimes they're not at their machine, they're talking to the other workers in the environment. The limitations of high B is I will push for a response, and I do have a tendency at times to over-verbalize and a tendency to be overly expressive. Oftentimes the high B will repeat themselves or say the same thing multiple times to get a response from other individuals. So we've looked at idea flow, autonomy and team in understanding roles in organizations, B drive, communication. Now, I keep saying about developing your own workforce. That is going to be, in my mind, critical in the next 10 years, because as we know, a lot of skilled positions that we just don't have individuals. I have many of my clients, especially in the manufacturing arena, that hire for a wiring pattern, and then they teach them the skill. And this can be from an entry-level production, quality, machine operation. There's a plethora of jobs that this will cover. So, but the concepts, and again, if you take the accumex yourself, you will know you, obviously, but then you'll know how to better align with others and think about what type of job the organization needs. Now I'm going to go into the third drive, which is called patience. Now we can all be a little bit patient. We can all be a little bit impatient at times. But our patience drive, what this tells us is our work style, how we prefer to work. It handles our speed of decision making and acceptance of pressure as well. But this is how we prefer to work. High C, by my nature, I'm more patient. Because I'm more patient, I have longer term focus. I like a sequential preference. I'm more of a deliberate decision maker. Low C's are just the opposite. I'm more impatient, which creates a shorter attention span. I'm more of a work juggler, and I'm a quick decision maker. Now, think about this from a jobs perspective, and I'll use something a little more generic. Emergency room nurses and doctors are low C because the environment is unpredictable. We work with an awful lot of medical clinics and hospitals, but intensive care, that's high C. Oftentimes career surgery is high C. If you look at elements in production, they can be high C, where you want somebody that's going to attack things on a sequential basis. We have a client who is a machine shop, and they had a low C as a machine operator, and he got a lot of parts out fast. And they said, man, this guy creates more parts than anybody in our company. However, he also creates the highest amount of scrap. So, because he was so impatient by nature, he wasn't following completely the production process. Low C's actually accept pressure, put pressure on themselves and others to perform. High C's like minimal pressure. Actually, high C's by their nature, if they feel pressure, they will push back on that pressure. Push back on it. So, think about when you have an urgent timetable. You want to let people know, hey, we got to do these things in this order, in this timetable to meet our promised on-time delivery. So low C's oftentimes will create plans. Everyone creates plans, high C's and low C's. But oftentimes low C's will take course corrections. High C's actually like to follow the plan in order. One of our manufacturing clients, the leadership is low C. Excuse me. The workforce is high C. They would create plans and then change those plans in the middle of implementation, 2-3 months in. It then came to their realization, if we're starting and stopping and switching gears, our employees are starting to lose confidence in us in executing plans of action. I say these things because many times these things have probably happened to you in your organization or in your work environment. Now, the strengths and limitations of these drives, again, strength of low C. I accept pressure and interruptions, may not always like it. I reprioritize as conditions change, and I will address multiple items at the same time. Limitations, tendency to take on too many responsibilities, can impede productivity by interrupting high Cs, and may be too impatient, may react or could react or react too quickly. So think about it. If you have 4 or 5 different machines running and you have one individual in charge of them, and they're constantly bouncing from machine to machine, doing different types of jobs, you may want to consider somebody who enjoys more variety, who enjoys that. However, if you're on a machine that's going to be producing 50,000 parts in a row, you probably are going to want somebody who has that more sequential focus. Strength of high C, I complete all steps in order. I have patience for long-term focus. I value completion and following the agenda of work items. Interruptions impede productivity. They're more pressure averse, and maybe overly deliberative. Remember when I mentioned doctors and nurses in a hospital, all right? One of the interesting things we found is that low C surgeons either do one of two things as they advance in their career. They either leave surgery because they don't like the sequential nature of it, or they pile all their surgeries onto one day. We've seen this happen multiple times. Oftentimes, those that are career surgeons, high levels of expertise are high C. Many years ago, my mom had to have another hip surgery. She had 9 hip surgeries done over the years, and went to an expert orthopedic surgeon. And everyone I meet, I ask them to take the survey. And it was very interesting. He said, I've done thousands of these, and that's what's given me the expertise. And it just so correlated that he was a high C. So think about jobs in your organization. And when you get your results, think about who you are in interacting with other individuals. The next drive we're going to talk about is certainty. I'm going to go through tilt factor, talk about a few other things, but I also do want to open it up so that we do have time for a few questions. D drive is what we call certainty. It has nothing to do with intellectual learning. It has everything to do with the environment that I best thrive within. Do I want a more flexible environment or a more structured environment? It also is in communication with others. I mentioned for those of you that take the accumex, there will be a how to best interact with me, because that way you can share it with others in your organization. Say, look, this is how I want information relayed to me. So with the D drive certainty, if your dot is to the left of the green line or low, those are individuals who want the summary sheet of information. They will actually pick and choose proof in the decision-making process. Low Ds look at rules and regulations and go, aha, exception handbook. If there's a rule, there's got to be an exception. Risk decisions become much easier because I don't need as much information. I like an environment that's more flexible with minimal amounts of structure. High Ds are just the opposite. Now you're probably noticing that I keep repeating the opposite because this is the beauty of it. You know who you are, but when you deal with somebody who's the opposite, they have the opposite characteristics that you have. So high Ds like more detailed information. They like proof from valued subject matter experts. They will follow rules and regulations. Risk decisions are more complex. They will make them. I just want more information and data to make the decision. I enjoy an environment that's more structured. So when you think about this from a jobs perspective, in developing and building your own workforce, oftentimes low Ds that like the flexibility you oftentimes will find them more in a sales role. Not always, but you will, because they like the more flexible environment. Oftentimes, though, quality, production is high D by nature, because I prefer the detailed information. I like the detailed information. The interesting thing is, with a high D bringing into your organization, they actually will accept the training in your way of doing things. Low Ds oftentimes will not, and that can be frustrating. We've had situations where we've gone into organizations saying, we've trained this person 6 times, and they still don't do it the right way. Well, once you know their wiring, as a low D, they may or may not accept it. Because the reality of it is, folks, we are all free-thinking beings. Now, understanding our strengths and limitations helps us to be better in our roles, also helps us to interact better with others, but not all people are willing to do that, and that's just the reality of life. Now, the strengths of low D are, I look beyond established rules and regulations. I don't need a lot of proof to be confident in decision making. I operate well in the gray area where there's no direction or roadmap. Oftentimes, outside sales is kind of that. Limitations, though, will pick and choose rules to follow based on their agenda, may not obtain enough information in the decision-making process, and may or may not accept proof. Again, high D has strength as well. High D strengths and limitations driven to perform work within established protocols. Will accept proof and information for decision making. Make a risk decision, but wants more information and certainty to mitigate chance of failure. Works well when provided the roadmap, the structure and path to follow when performing work. Limitations. When is perfect enough? You know who you are out there, and there are some of you. Lack of detailed information may slow the work process and decision making. And without feedback, will worry if work performance is done well enough. Oftentimes in manufacturing, you have a lot of high D because manufacturing is a structured, certain, detail-driven environment. High Ds want feedback because it creates certainty and builds their self-confidence. But the kind of feedback they want isn't necessarily "you rock." Tell me what I've done well and areas I need to improve. So when you're dealing with your workforce, folks, whenever you have to give feedback, the default way to do it is always start with work done well, then areas needing improvement in that order. That way the individual is more open to receiving the feedback, the critiquing, the performance review that you're going to be giving to them. And when you start with the positive and then move to the area that needs improvement, they're much more willing to take that coaching and that feedback. Now, also we want to consider another thing is the tilt factor. For those of you, and again, I encourage you, it's complimentary, to take the accumex index. I hope you do write this down or take a screenshot. You'll notice the tilt factor. What that tells us is how somebody tilts in an ambiguous decision. 50% of the numbers say turn right, 50% of the numbers say turn left. Well, if I'm to the right or more objective, I will tilt in that situation to a more analytical or black and white or objective decision. If I'm to the left or more subjective, I will tilt more to the emotional or the gut feel. We had a client contact us, a relatively new client, and one of their managers is a very task-driven, analytical person. He's all task, all analytical. And they said, but what we don't understand is why he hires so bad. He had a very low tilt factor. So when he met people, if he liked them, he made an emotional hire as opposed to a factual hire or an objective. Now this kicks in when you have identical wiring patterns. You can have two identical wiring patterns with different tilt factor. You know, it's also innate approachability. You know, lower tilt, smaller personal space, higher tilt, wider personal space. For any of you here that might be Seinfeld fans of years ago, you remember when they had the close talker, somebody incredibly low tilt. It's kind of funny, in my own home, I'm low in the tilt. My wife is very high in the tilt. I walk into the kitchen and she's like, get out of my space, please get out of my space. All right. So it's understanding how people are wired, and that one little critique, like the tilt factor difference, can change actually the persona of two identical wiring patterns. We measure a lot of things in the work environment: idea flow, communication, work style, certainty for decision making, and how people will approach a situation, objectively or subjectively, in their own personal space. Now, why is all of this important? 75% of the US workforce is currently disengaged from their jobs. Those are the latest numbers from the Gallup poll. And there are two reasons. Number one, jobs have wiring, people have wiring. All of you in the audience, think about a time in your life when you maybe had a job or a role that you did not like. It was probably because you weren't wired for that role. Think about the role you do like. You're more wired for that role. When you match people's wiring and the job wiring, creates more satisfaction, engagement, and productivity, along with engaged and productive people. Knowing a person's wiring creates better management and motivation, improved communication, and decision making. One-size-all management techniques rarely work. Now, the one tip, I'm providing feedback to high certainty individuals in the organization, because manufacturing and production is predominantly has a lot of high D in it. That's just a good approach. And you can use the B drive without even having to take the accumex to say to somebody, do you prefer to think things through or verbalize it? And again, I highly recommend that you take it so that you get your snapshot and then better understand others as well, and how to improve that communication. Now, the accumex index, we are statistically validated and US EEOC compliant, which means we can be used in the hiring process. Let me give you a real good example. We have two candidates. They both come highly recommended. I'm sure all of you in the room have had a candidate or two that have come highly recommended. Some have worked out really well, others have not. But here's a good example. I have two candidates. I have a very serious looking gentleman and a very happy-go-lucky looking female, all right? So they both come highly recommended. They say they're team-oriented. They profess to be heads down and analytical. They say they enjoy a sequential work environment, and they state that they strive for quality and detail. Now, my guess is almost all of you in the room have experienced this, where you've hired somebody, oh yes, this is what I like to do, and then you hire them and you find out they're not at all like their wiring. So just to continue the example here, in nature though, the gentleman here, he prefers his way. He wants a heads-up environment. He enjoys variety and wants a flexible environment. How long do you think he's actually going to want to stay in a role that's team-oriented, heads down, sequential, detailed, and structured? Oftentimes, that's what ends up causing turnover, or even worse, somebody who stays in the organization and is unhappy and becomes a negative promoter of the organization. In this case, the young lady, she prefers the team. That's their natural wiring. Heads down, enjoys sequence, favors detail and structure. Now, you can take some of this information and use it in the interview process. However, as all of us know, interviews can sometimes be misleading. I read a great quote at one point in time from an author. He said, if all the GDP improvements that were on resumes actually existed in the marketplace, we'd have 10% GDP growth per year. And oftentimes interviews can be award-winning, Academy Award-winning performances. So you can take some of this information and better align it to jobs and understanding the candidates and your environment. So by the way, in a production role, the gentleman that prefers his way, is heads up, likes variety and a flexible environment, actually is a 10% match to the wiring requirements for that job. So when you think about that, what does that mean to the organization? Turnover, oftentimes quality, and attendance issues as well. Young lady, she prefers a team, heads down, sequence and structure, and 90% match. Chance of her becoming a long-term contributor in the organization skyrockets. So you want to develop your workforce by knowing the wiring and teaching the skill. Again, I believe this is the real big initiative of the next 10 years because there are so few skilled trades workers out there is a reality of it. Many of our manufacturing clients actually are hiring people who have no background and skill set in that particular arena. And actually one of our machine shops, they stopped hiring people with experience about 10 years ago. And they said, we bring in people, we look for wiring, mechanical aptitude, we teach them the job. And that way they don't come with bad habits from other organizations, and they do the things the way we want them done in the organization. So this process can be applied for almost all roles within the manufacturing environment. And that's key. And the beauty of it is when you get great talent, then you can work their way up the proper way in the organization without having the Peter principle kick in, where you promote somebody to their highest level of incompetence, all right? So you want that to be able to promote them the right way and groom them for success because we all want long-term contributors. The longer somebody is with an organization, the more knowledge they have, the more skill they develop, and the more beneficial they come to the organization if they're in the right role, they're the right person in the right role. So the items I really want you to take away from today is understanding human wiring. Hope you took some notes on that B drive and the D drive. Obtain your complementary accumex index. Understand that jobs have wiring just like people. And you can develop your workforce by matching people wiring with job wiring. Higher retention, higher productivity, higher quality. So I want to thank you for your attention. I know these presentations are a little bit short. We have to go quick, but now we'd like to open it up for Q&A.
So if anybody has any questions, you can put your, do your raise hand and you'll see that at the bottom right there, and I'll call on you and we can get those questions answered.
I hope I didn't put everybody to sleep in this presentation.
No, your presentation was amazing. I was trying to take it all in and then identify who all the people were in my organization that matched those. I have ideas.
Good.
Do you have any questions? Lizette, do you have a question?
I wanted to say thank you. I wanted to say thank you very much. This is great. Yeah, so we adopted it in the organization. I was actually, taking notes and trying to understand where do I fall in this in these dimensions that he described. So thank you very much, and I will be taking the accumex survey. So
Well,
thank
great.
you.
Jay, I do have a question for you. Would we be able to share your presentation with members, or I should say attendees that would like to see it?
Absolutely. I did send Michelle the presentation and note sheet, and also the slide that has the way you can get your complimentary accumex. She has all that information. I'd be more than happy to share it for those that could not attend, or if you wanted to do it at a future point in time, that'd be great.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We'll make sure to be able to provide that to anybody that would like it. It's very interesting to talk about how people are differently wired, and you need to take that into consideration when you do your hiring. But as you know, right now it's been a little difficult for not only manufacturers but also businesses in general. They're looking for people, and they're trying to find the right folks to come into the jobs, but there are a lot of other factors that out there. Would this test, this assessment tool help those folks to understand what they feel like they are, and help them to get away from not wanting to take a job right now, but take the job now?
That's a great question, because that is impacting just across the entire United States right now. And where you really see businesses hurt hard are quick service restaurants, fast food. And we actually work with many of them. And what we've developed is a way of, once you know the wiring pattern you want to attract, doing a different type of ad to attract people in, and showing that there are career paths. What a lot of people don't realize in that arena is they like, oh, well, flipping burgers, it's a dead end job. No, it's not. There's actually quite a bit career paths. And one of the issues, and I'm sure many of you in manufacturing have the same thing, looking for long-term contributors, that can be attracted to your organization. So we have many techniques to attract people in and then show them that there's a roadmap for long-term success. Because as was said to me on the call the other day, the employment picture is really going to change September 7th when the extended unemployment benefits go away. But many states, I think it's up to 5 or 6 now, are ending them early. And there will be a lot of workers in the workforce. Those that take action now are going to have a better chance of selecting people who truly want to have a career. We have a hands up in the back there. Is that Julio?
Yes, Julio. And then we have also one in the chat. So after Julio's question, we have one from Tom Kane in the chat feature.
Sure.
Hey, good afternoon, Jay. And it was a very interesting topic. And I'm looking at the accumex tool as something that we can use for our current team. And also, is this something that's easily used for the not the onboarding, but the hiring process? So you know what type of person you're getting, and finding the right place for them. Is it a tool that can be used in that way?
Absolutely. To be used in the pre-screening process, there's 2 things that an assessment has to be. And frankly, I want to let you know this right up front here. 90% of the personality assessments in the marketplace do not have these 2 characteristics. Warning. Number 1, you have to be statistically validated. Why is that? That protects you legally, because there's no variation, again, amongst age, gender, or ethnicity. So that if in the event you hired one individual over another, you can say, well, I did it because of the wiring. That allows you to do pre-screening. Second of all, you have to be EEOC compliant, which means you don't create a disparate or negative impact toward any particular class of individuals, and we do not. So yes, most of our clients, what they'll do is screen people through. When you take it, it takes less than 5 minutes. I mean, you'll be amazed at the data you'll get in 5 minutes. And they can kind of screen right through who would fit better here, who would fit better here, who would fit better here. Great question.
And Jay, if you don't mind, if I can ask another question.
Sure.
So it seems very technical. You know, obviously you had to squeeze it in such a small in short time. So your clients, I assume they receive some training on how to use these results, or do they receive a consultant to help them navigate through these results? Because I could see this using, like, anytime you have a project going on and you want to build a team for that specific project, you can use this tool to put the right people in the right places.
Well, we do both. We train the clients in the instrument, and then we have support. You know, I mean, Bill Cox, I've worked with Bill for many, many years. And, you know, we train you, and then we are also a backup. So, hey, I've got a question, or I've got an issue, and we provide that as all part of our service. We're not like lawyers. I hope there's no lawyers in the room that, you know, we run the clock every time you call. No, we have unlimited customer service. That's a great question. I do want to address, is it Tom's question here?
Yes,
Seems
he's
like
in the chat box.
Yeah, seems like the wiring for a worker is quite different from the wiring for a manager, making promotion impossible. Maybe yes, maybe no. That's, I mean, the best way I can answer that question that you typed in. Oftentimes, no. Supervisors, or, you know, oftentimes many companies have working team leaders. They can be promoted into that role. The other thing our tool gives you the ability to do is, if you're looking for individuals who do want to be supervisors, to hire to that wiring pattern, teach them the job and promote them up, but you can coach them through it. So you have flexible uses. That's one of the things we hear frequently that really isn't the case, because in the majority of our clients, people that are brought in are promoted. The key is to promote them in the right way. For example, you might have a rock star inside salesperson, put them on the outside, and they don't do well. So there are multiple. And the reason being for that, Tom, is because there is no good assessment that measures ambition. So when you bring someone into your organization, there just isn't. And they're ambitious, and they're a good worker. There are oftentimes many avenues to promote them. I don't know, we are wiring specific always to companies. So, but that we get that frequently, and that is a concern that in most organizations does not that does not impact them negatively. I hope that helped answer your question there, Tom. Bruce. Somebody raised their hand in the back. Bruce? Just testing out the functionality.
I'm sorry, I was unmuting. Okay, so hey, Jay, thanks for this. And I teach at UTSA and the MBA program, and this is about half of the organizational behavior class. So, and you get it in 1 hour. So I really like how it's simplified and straightforward. But the other big thing is, you're not trying to pick somebody that's the highest on the scale. You're not trying to avoid people lowest. You're trying to understand there's a spectrum, and it's not right or wrong. It just is. So I really appreciate that you said that, and just kind of how well this aligns with everything we teach on the MBA program.
Well, thank you, Bruce. That's quite a compliment. I really appreciate it.
It looks like Tom has one more question.
Sure.
Yeah, it really is my first question. If they can fudge the interview and be a performer, how do you know they're not going to do that during the survey and just become what they wish they were instead of what they actually are?
Great question. It's very, very difficult to fudge the survey.
Okay.
There is a way to do it. I'm not going to tell you, Tom, until you take it. I'll tell you after you take it, seriously. Applicants, what we ask, answer it honestly. Don't overthink it. And 97% of the time, they do. Once you do take it, Tom, seriously, get back with me. I will tell you how people can fudge it, and that will become your red flag. When we see this, we train our clients in this. When you see this, don't even bring them in. They're trying to fudge it. It's very, very difficult to fudge. Extremely hard. And once you take it, so please take it, and then I'd love to have an offline conversation with you.
Thank you.
Great.
All
Anyone
right.
else?
I